Good morning. Welcome to the 224th meeting of the Program Management Committee. Can I get a roll call?
Note that all trustees are present. Thank you.
Can I get approval of the meeting for November 2nd? Move approval. 2021?
Second.
Rich?
All right, good morning, everyone. Be going over the engineering department agenda items for our next Thursday, December 9th meeting. Starting off in your packets, the first project is the Bissell Coldwater, Missouri Merrimack Public I&I Reduction Contract A. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of rehabilitation of approximately 62,000 feet of sanitary sewers, 6 to 36 inch in diameter, utilizing the cured-in-place pipe method. The rehabilitation of 31 manholes, 762 service connections, and 20 point repairs. The purpose of the project is to reduce inflow and infiltration in the Grand Glaze and Fishpot Creek watersheds. The district received 3 bids for this project. The low bid was from SAK Construction. The bid was below our designer's estimate, and our appropriation of $3.1 million is below the original budget for the project. The overall project did decrease in scope during the design of the project. SAK has committed to 20.36% M and WBE participation on the project. This is funded through our state revolving fund loan program, which requires 10% minority and 10% women, and SAK has met that goal on the project. Any questions? All right, moving to the next project. It's the Calks Creek A Pump Station Improvement Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the construction of a new submersible pump station and general upgrades to electrical, mechanical, and control systems. The purpose of the project is to replace and rehabilitate an aging pump station and the associated systems. The district received 3 bids on this project. The low bid was from Plocker Construction Company. The bid was below our design estimate, and our appropriation of $5 million in fiscal year 22 and $3.2 million in fiscal year 23 is below our original planned budget for the project. So today we'll be asking you initially to appropriate $5 million next Thursday, and then we'll come back with a planned supplemental in fiscal year 23 on this larger project. Plocker Construction is committed to just over 17% MBE African American participation on the project, with the firms listed on the write-up, which meets our goal of 17%. The next item is the Jefferson Barracks Tunnel, and this action appropriates additional funds, and this is a planned appropriation to the ongoing construction project that's being constructed by SAK Construction. The work in this project consists of the construction of approximately 17,800 feet of tunnel lined with 7-foot diameter fiberglass pipe and containing instrumentation conduits, an 88-foot diameter launch shaft, and a 28-foot diameter recovery shaft, several intake structures, and site work in a major controlled fill. The purpose of this project is to construct a 17,000 linear feet, 7-foot diameter deep tunnel, which will eliminate 2 of our pumping stations, the Martigny pumping station and the Jefferson Barracks pumping station, and then gravity flow this up to our Lime wastewater treatment plant. This is a partial supplemental appropriation of $35 million. This is our final appropriation on this project. So our total appropriation on the project will be $155 million and fully fund the project. I did provide, since we've talked about this project quite a bit over the last couple of years, I had Alan Mueller, my assistant director in charge of construction, kind of put some pictures together. So in your packet, you should find a group of pictures. I'll start in the upper left. recall, the tunnel machine was originally stuck, so that's a picture of that tunneling machine after we freed it and we removed that from the tunnel. To the right, upper right, that's really where the initial tunnel machine was stuck. And what you see in the foreground here was the hand dug tunnel that was put in order to retrieve that. Bottom left is the new machine that we're going to be putting in. It's a 14-foot diameter machine. This is it gets shipped in, assembled, and prepped to make sure everything's there at the warehouse for SAK. Some of this has since been moved to the tunnel, so it's starting to be assembled in the tunnel to be launched. There has been some delays in getting some of the parts. These parts come from all over the world. So, but right now, it's scheduled to start excavating in January. And to the right, it's not that they haven't been working. We've got a number of shafts where we're going to connect pump stations to the tunnel. To the right is just one of the pictures of one of those shafts. I think there's 3 or 4 shafts that they have constructed. So when we're ready, we'll basically be able to go from shaft to shaft with this construction. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Next item is the Watkins Creek Pump Station force main replacement. This action appropriates additional funds, and again, this is a planned appropriation similar to an ongoing construction project that's being built by Cole Grading. The work consists of construction of approximately 8,200 linear feet of sanitary force main, 20-inch in diameter, and about 1,000 feet of force main and tunnel. The purpose of this project is to replace the existing force main, which has extensive damage caused by hydrogen sulfide and is in need of repair. This is a partial supplemental appropriation of $1.6 million. We appropriated $4 million in last fiscal year, and so we're appropriating the remaining 1.6 in this, bring our total appropriation to $5.6 million on this project. And the project is progressing nicely. All right, the next project is the Orchard and Windsor Lane Storm Sewer Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the construction of approximately 579 feet of storm sewers, 24 inches in diameter. The purpose of the project is alleviate yard flooding at 16 Windsor Lane and 11 and 18 Orchard Lane in the city of Kirkwood. The district received 5 bidders on this project. The low bid was from Tailor Made Construction. The bid was below our designer's estimate. Our appropriation of $250,000, which includes $20,000 for utility relocation, is equal to the budget of $250,000 on the project. Tailor Made is committed to 17.25% subcontracting to African Americans with the firms listed. And I'll go ahead and add in that Tailor Made is also an African American prime, so we'll have full participation on this particular project. All right, the next 2 items are green infrastructure grants. The first item is the CSO volume reduction green infrastructure for Rankin Technical College. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter into agreement with Rankin Technical College, provide financial assistance through the green infrastructure grant for the construction of green infrastructure. The purpose of the project is to reduce combined sewer overflows to the Mississippi River per a long-term control plan, the consent decree. The project will reduce runoff with the installation of pervious pavers and amended soils at 2 redevelopment properties in the North City area. The total cost of the project is estimated at $47,796, and they're requesting reimbursement of $34,200 for the cost of the green infrastructure. In your packet, you'll find a map which locates these projects. Again, they're located in the North Newstead area. I guess you could call that the Central West End, in the Del Mar area, the Delmar Loop area. So Rankin is redeveloping. In other words, they utilize their students to do redevelopment projects and build homes, and they're taking out grants to do that green infrastructure on those properties. The next item is a grant for Washington University softball field. This authorizes the district to enter an agreement with Washington University to provide financial assistance to the grant program. The purpose of the project is to reduce combined sewer overflows, in this case to the river to Pear, per the long-term control plan and consent decree. This project will reduce runoff volume with the installation of water quality and storage system. This total project cost is $548,308, and Washington University is requesting $498,600 reimbursement for the cost of the project. This project in the map is located at Forsyth and Big Bend, and they're redeveloping a new softball field and then capturing surface runoff through storage system and through water quality basins on the property. Next item, we've got 3 items which are our annual appropriation for dollars. When I bring the green infrastructure projects to you, I'm basically asking you to allow us to enter into the agreement with these owners. We appropriate the dollars for these projects that I bring every month, one time a year. So that's this month. So what I'm doing is there's 3 appropriations, one for River to Pear, one for the Mississippi River, and then one for our small grants program that's located in the non-CSO areas. So I'm going to give a little short presentation, kind of give you an update. I'll do this annually, kind of let you know where our dollars stand, and then I'll do the appropriations for those 3 projects. So you should have a presentation come up in your packet. Rainscaping or green infrastructure, you'll hear that term with our marketing, and on our website, we refer to the green infrastructure projects as rainscaping. It just has a better feel to it. Our annual fiscal year appropriations for the green infrastructure areas, again, we have 3 appropriations, 2 that are commitments to the consent decree, the Mississippi River and River to Pear. And then we have a small grant program where we partner with Missouri Botanical Garden and the green infrastructure for some of the small grant program, I'm sorry. There's several ways that we spend the money in Mississippi River and in River to Pear area. One of them is large grants. So annually we'll put out advertising for folks that are in those areas that are interested in a grant for their project for green infrastructure. Typically we'll get it for large redevelopment projects. We've gotten a couple from the city of St. Louis that are doing new street improvements where they're adding green infrastructure to the project. We've had a couple of those at the large grants. Actually 2 of those were with the city of St. Louis. I think I just recently brought one. I think it was down in the South City, and the city's getting ready to do North Jefferson here, and we're working with a grant on that project as well. On the large grant, obviously there's multiple types of green infrastructure that are eligible. Most of the time we see are bioretention or green gardens that you'll see along the roadway or near the parking lot where the water runs off directly to those. But we also have the porous pavement, the brick pavers or porous asphalt. Blue roofs, we haven't seen any of those. That's where you actually capture water and it has surface water. Green roofs, we're actually building one of those out here with our project out here, so we've seen a couple of those. Green streets, again, 2 of our bigger projects with the city of St. Louis are green streets. Amended soil and planter boxes, those are generally projects that you'll see on an individual property. Something where they take their downspouts to a garden box or actually take it to an area that the soil's been worked up to allow the water to drain in. Next item, rainscaping. Again, just to reiterate, we have a consent decree commitment for green infrastructure. Again, it's all about reducing the surface water, the rainwater from getting to the combined sewer system and getting that back in the ground. Thus, during a rain event, it prevents us from overflowing more to the Mississippi River into River to Pear. Our commitment was $100 million in the Bissell area, which drains to the Mississippi River, a $20 million commitment with the extension of our consent decree in the Lima area. We did a pilot program to kind of come up with what the projects look like, and that had to be approved by EPA. That was done early on in the consent decree, and so we're off and running right now. Next item, kind of give you an idea where we're at with our expenditures. Through 2020, we have expended about $38 million in the Mississippi River watershed. Our goal is $100 million, so we're about 38% there, and that's by 2034. We've removed about 41 million gallons of CSO. In other words, that's water that does not go to the rivers or the streams anymore. And then we've greened about 172 acres. The River to Pear, the 20 million that we committed for River to Pear has come after a little later than we started on the Mississippi River. So right now we've only spent about $1 million, but we've got quite a bit. This past year, in the fall here, we've done a call for grants, the large grant call, and we've received 9 applications totaling about $7.5 million. There's a lot of interest in the green infrastructure loans. One of we are excited, one of the projects we did for the River to Pear, as I brought to you, I think earlier this year, was a project in cooperation with Forest Park Forever, where they were doing some things to their lakes, which allowed more water to be captured in those lakes. And all those lakes overflow into the underground River to Pear, which is a combined sewer. So all that reduces the amount of overflow we have to the River to Pear. So that was a good cooperative project we had there. And finally, some of the other cooperative projects that we have with the green infrastructure is we have a demolition program that we work with the Green City Coalition and the City of St. Louis. Early on with the program, obviously the EPA and MDNR didn't want us to do nothing but tear down houses with our green infrastructure. So we committed that out of the $100 million, $15 million would be our cap for demolition of homes and creating green space. So we're on our way right now. We've spent, I'm trying to get my numbers here. We've demolished 176, and then we added another 512 with 13.5 million budget. So we've done a total of 688 demolitions in cooperation with the city and the Green City Coalition. And basically that, it created 27 acres of impervious area to allow the water to drain. And when we do those demolitions, there's no redevelopment allowed on those particular properties. In other words, they're deed restricted, and they'll always remain green space.
Who pays to maintain those long term?
The city, whoever the owner is, and typically that's the LRA with the city. And occasionally we'll have somebody that has where there's a house still developed, will ask, hey, can I, and they'll maintain it as well. But that's all part of our agreement, the city. We also, again, we have the small grant program, which will allow individual property owners that are developing or want to do something on their own property, take their downspouts to rain barrels or build a rain garden on their own property. We have a program both in the combined sewer area and the separate sewer area to do that. We do that in cooperation with Missouri Botanical Garden. They run the program. They do all the education. In other words, they run programs, and I'll give some specifics on that. I think I have it when I do the appropriation. I take that back. I got it here. We've done 5 rounds of the small grant program. We've administered 320 grants, and we've educated about 800 people on this type of work. So it's really good outreach for us. So that totals about $1.4 million, and our goal is $4 million for the overall program. So that really gets a lot of our education out there, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. In other words, we typically have more people interested than we have money on an annual basis. Any questions? Right now, I'm going to do the 3 appropriations, so there's still time for questions after that. The first one is the CSO Green Infrastructure Program appropriates additional fund for the construction of green infrastructure. The work consists of green infrastructure facilities, various location in the city of St. Louis and part of St. Louis County. The purpose of work is to reduce combined sewer overflows to the Mississippi River. This appropriation will fund rainscaping, which includes reimbursement for green infrastructure for large grants, for redevelopment grants, and the small grant program in the city of St. Louis. And then with that, MSD also does individual programs. I failed to mention that in my presentation. We're going to take credit for the green infrastructure that we're constructing here at Market, and then we do additional rain gardens as well, the district does. So this appropriation of $5 million results in a total appropriation to date of $55,200,000 towards our goal of $100 million. And I think I gave that update. We've spent about $38 million to date. The next item is the CSO volume green infrastructure for the River to Pear area. Again, to reduce CSO to the areas in the city of St. Louis and part of the near St. Louis County to reduce overflows to the River to Pear. Again, the appropriation of rainscaping will be for large grants, for the redevelopment grants, and for the small grant program. This appropriation of $3 million results in a total appropriation to date of $11 million towards the goal of $20 million for the green infrastructure to comply with the consent. And then finally, the stormwater quality green infrastructure, which is a small grant rainscaping program, which is located primarily outside of the combined sewer area, the remaining part of the district. This appropriates additional funds and authorize staff to enter an interagency agreement or amend the interagency agreement with Missouri Botanical Gardens. The purpose of this is to accommodate our Phase 2 stormwater program is to improve area water quality by preventing harmful pollutants from being carried by stormwater into the local streams. The purpose of the stormwater quality grant is to encourage individual landowners to implement green infrastructure, aka rainscaping, techniques to their property to address water quality of stormwater. To maximize the effectiveness of the stormwater quality grant program, we partnered with Missouri Botanical Garden. The total appropriation is for $258,000 for that is the administration of the program by Missouri Botanical Gardens. When we first started the small grant, we were trying to do a lot of that work internally. And Missouri Botanical Garden had already a similar program that they were doing called the Deer Creek Initiative. So they were doing basically the same program where they were using other grant dollars besides MSD. So we sat down and worked out an agreement with them. It's worked out real well. We take credit for it not only with the CSO program, but we have a district-wide stormwater permit. And part of that is public education. And this goes a long way to the public education required by that permit. All right. Another short presentation. This is about the OMCI grant program. If you recall, about a year ago, after we lost the 2019 election for district-wide stormwater revenue, the district went ahead and initiated the board about turning on some of the OMCI taxing grants, which would allow us to fund stormwater in certain areas of the district where these taxing districts were set up. At that time, we reached out to all the municipalities and did outreach in these areas to see what the interest was of turning these OMCIs back on. There's a total of 12 OMCI taxing districts. At that time, we had interest from a total of 6 of the OMCIs that were interested in turning those taxes back on and allowing us to do work. And when we did that and did that outreach, there was interest from the municipalities that said, hey, we understand you're generating that money, but there's some things we'd like to do. So what we did is we agreed to create a grant program. So within each one of those districts, the money that's generated, we take 50% of it, offer that to the municipalities, and they can do work within their municipality. In other words, it's allocated based on the money that they provide to the taxing district. So it's worked real good. So each year I have to bring to the board an appropriation. For the appropriation for our 50%, those come project by project. When I bring a project to you, it's out of a certain district, and we do that. For the grant program, we appropriate all the dollars in that OMCI at one time, and then we bring the individual grant requests that are over $50,000 to you, just like I bring a project to you. And we brought some of those recently, and I'm going to cover those in this presentation. If it's under $50,000, the municipality is just going to go do some storm work on one of their properties or some backyard storm work that's been a pain in their side. They ask us for the money, they do the work, and we reimburse them. On the larger projects, obviously, it requires more information with regard to design and construction. So I'm going to give a brief presentation. I will mention there were 6 total OMCIs that were turned back on. 5 of those participated in the grant program. The Maline area, which is in the North County area, municipalities didn't feel like they had the wherewithal to administer the grant program, so they said, MSD, you just do the projects that are the highest priority for you. In addition to that, in next year's budget, which we're preparing right now for fiscal year 23, there's been a request now. One of the OMCIs that wasn't interested in turning back on when we went 2 years ago, the Gravelway Creek watershed, now there's an interest, so we'll be turning that OMCI, collecting taxes there. Obviously, that's in the Crestwood, South County area, which, to be honest with you, is one of our highest needs areas as far as the number of projects and projects that we have. So being able to turn that back on and start doing some stormwater work is going to be good. And they will also, the municipalities in that area and St. Louis County are interested in the grant program. So the next slide, some of the grant approvals, and you may or may not remember that. The city of Ladue has a bank stabilization project along Deer Creek, and the grant totals are there. So we've had one from Glendale, Frontenac, Florissant's had a couple in all of that. So we've approved about $700,000 in grants for those projects listed. And right now we're looking at 5 additional requests for grants for that area. In 2021, only about a third of the municipalities actually asked for money. So, and I'm just going to use a crude example. If we've got if the OMCI generates $5 million, you know, the municipalities make the grant. So if a municipality doesn't want grant money, so of the 2.5, which is allocated for grants, we don't appropriate that. In other words, that will just be added to the district's pot of money. In other words, we'll have additional dollars.
Those dollars to be spent back in the district, or
correct,
or they kept.
Yeah, the district will use that to do their own projects. In other words, some municipalities, some of the dollars are real small. They're just saying, no, we're not going to mess with it. Some of them just prefer to let us handle the stormwater. But what we're also doing is hearing municipalities that didn't do it the first year now saying, oh, I think I want to do something this year. And they also have the ability, if they have a larger job that they want to do, they'll say, appropriate my money this year, and then next year, appropriate the money, and then I'll ask for the grant to do a larger project if it isn't enough. So, and in this case, this year, Florissant, that we're going to request a grant for the design this year, and then we're gonna do the construction next year. So, we're trying to be as flexible as we can, with the work. It has to be stormwater work, obviously to address an issue that we would have to address or go see.
Trustee White, just so, yes, any dollars collected in those sub-districts are put just in those sub-districts. You can't use them anywhere else in the district.
We just make the decision as to which project in that.
Right, we use that benefit cost analysis that we use for everything else. It just goes into that pot, and Rich will just take the next project down on the list.
All right, and the last slide is just the appropriations that I'm gonna make this year. And I'm not gonna go over those because I'm gonna go over those individually as I cover these 5. And again, we've got about half the municipalities in those areas that have requested us to hold that money for them. So if there's no questions, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm really just gonna kind of cover all 5 at one time, and I'll make it a little easier, kind of get us through this. So again, this is the OMCI Reimbursement Grants Program. There are 5 OMCIs: the Coldwater Creek, the Deer Creek, the Seminary Branch of River de Pear, Sugar Creek, and University City. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter intergovernmental agreements under $50,000, not involving MSD infrastructure improvement, with municipalities where revenue is collected by the OMCI taxing districts. The reimbursement program allocates approximately 1/2 of the OMCI revenue generated in each municipality back to the municipality for eligible stormwater expenditures. Each eligible stormwater expenditure may include storm sewer, inlet construction, drainage improvements, stream bank stabilization, erosion control projects, cleaning under bridges or cleaning detention basins, stormwater planning or engineering costs, or other stormwater-related expenses as determined appropriate by the districts. Activities for MS4 permit compliance, which are requirements that the municipalities are required to do by permit along with us, we will not reimburse for those because really what we want them to do is take care of an issue with regard to stormwater. We'll be making the following appropriations. For Coldwater Creek, $1,049,544. For Deer Creek, $1,563,211. Seminary Branch of River de Pear, $124,292. Sugar Creek, $148,421. And the University City, $478,012 will be the appropriations for those. And on your individual write-ups, the breakdown of those dollars to what municipalities is located, it's quite a few, so I'm not going to cover those individually, but if you should have a question between now and next week, about an individual municipality or anything like that, feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and I can let you know what we have going with that municipality. So. Are there any questions? All right, just a couple more items left here. The radar rainfall data, this action appropriates additional funds and authorizes staff to amend the contract and exercise the second of 4 option years for this contract. The ordinance authorizes the district to amend the contract with View and Associates. This contract allows the district to continue maintaining the integration between the existing rain gauge network that the district operates and NexRad radar data in an effort to produce what they call gauge-adjusted radar rainfall data, or GAR, used by the district engineers and various planning and design consultants in the operations department and division. This technology allows the district to estimate more accurately the amount of rain that falls within the district boundaries that is not detected by one of our rain gauge sites. It increases essentially the number of locations we can identify rainfall amounts from like 100 where we have rain gauges to almost 2,000 separate locations, data points. Using the GAR data to determine the return period, like if it's a 100-year rain event, a 10-year rain event, things like that. And then what we do is we correlate that with during a big rain event of where we have problems. In other words, was it caused by something wrong with our sewer, or was it just caused by the amount of rain that our system wouldn't handle? So it's really valuable when we're using that. This contract is for $150,000, and then we have 4 more years left on the contract. Any questions? Very valuable tool for my staff. Our next item is a supplemental appropriation to an ongoing project called the Wet Weather Optimization Project. This ordinance appropriates an additional $1.5 million and authorize us to amend amendment number 1 for a contract with Jacobs Engineering for the Wet Weather Optimization Study. The Wet Weather Optimization Study was established in order to design and implement a wet weather control strategy for the Lee May service areas under various conditions towards the end of, from now until the end of the consent decree. The goal of the project is to evaluate opportunities to improve water quality by increasing the level of service of existing infrastructure and planned capital improvements, and then also to possibly reduce the number. We're building, we bring storage tanks to you, we build storage tunnels to you, all located within the same watershed. Lee May is a large watershed, so you may have a rain event in one area where you're utilizing the storage and another area where you're not. And what this will allow us to do is to allow all those storage areas to talk to one another and to where we're maximizing the amount of overflow that we're storing in those, thus reducing the amount that goes to the environment. It's a very good strategy. And what it allows us to do, we'll still be storing what we're required by the consent decree, but what it'll do is it'll give us that added piece to possibly collect more and thus increase the level of service. The result of the project will be the implementation of what we call a real-time decision support system that will operate the infrastructure with the ability to incorporate future planned infrastructure. So we've got tunnels we've built, we've got tanks we've built, but we've got future. We'll be able to take this design and put in a future tunnel and see how the whole overall system reacts. So it's very critical. It's being done by a lot of combined sewer overflow municipalities throughout the area. And it's become very successful. Obviously, technology is a great thing, and we're taking advantage of it. So again, the appropriation is $1.5 million, and that's equal to what we had to budget for the project. And that concludes the agenda items. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Nope. Are there any other business to be discussed?
None from the district.
Thank you, Rich. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 4th, 2022. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
It was moved and seconded, Trustee
Okay.
Jefferson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep your documents or move them up. We'll get documents switched up, and Trustee Fair will be able to start whenever you're ready.
And welcome to the 273rd meeting of the Finance Committee. Can we get a roll call, please?
And we'll note that all trustees are present.
And is there a motion for approval of the minutes from November 2nd?
So move.
Okay, minutes are approved. Let's move forward with the quarterly pension update, please.
All right, thank you. We've got Peter Lemick and Mike Comstock from AM on the line, and they are going to walk through the quarterly pension report. Take it away.
Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Peter Lemick speaking. Hopefully you can all hear me clearly. If not, please interject and let me know. We have a couple of items for you this morning, one being a markets update, how markets have performed so far here in 2021, and kind of what our thoughts are on what to focus on and look at rounding out this year and going into 2022 as well. And then we have an update on the assets for the pension and 2 DC plans as well. So maybe looking at page 4 of the packet in front of you, the title here should say Market Trends in 2021. And going from left to right, kind of taking a look back at what we've seen so far in 2021, we saw the increased fiscal spending really coming from the COVID relief packages in 2020, carrying into the first quarter of 2021, really helping boost the economy. About $2 trillion in assets being injected into the economy over that year and a quarter time period or so. That really resulted in the second quarter of very strong growth, about a 6.5% annualized GDP growth number in the second quarter, and kind of the buzzword over the past couple of quarters now has been CPI. So that's a measure of inflation. It has been elevated over the past year or so, and that's remained pretty persistent. About a 5% headline CPI or increase in inflation over the second quarter. And that's both of those cumulatively have really led to a strong increase in the overall assets. When we look at the assets on the year to date and showing 1 year period, the pension and the DC plans combined assets have increased quite significantly. However, it has also introduced a degree of uncertainty in the markets. And I think we've seen that play out, particularly in the past couple of days here or so in the markets, where with more volatility in the markets, you can see on the right, particularly within equity markets, with prices being so high, any new news has tended to result in very sharp reactions in the markets over the past couple of weeks. And overall, on a year-to-date basis, we continue to see yields increase towards the higher end. Flipping ahead to page 5, this is just looking back at how the major capital markets that you all invest in via the pension and all for your participants via the DC plans, how they performed. The numbers that are shaded in tan, those numbers are through the end of the third quarter of 2021. And then all the way to the right, those are more updated numbers. Those are showing how those indexes or how those capital markets have returned through the time of distribution of this report. So November 23rd, just before people broke for Thanksgiving. You can see the top line there, global stocks over the quarter down about 1.1% on the year-to-date trailing 1 year period. Global stocks have been extraordinarily strong, up nearly 29% over the trailing 1 year period. Broken down on a regional basis, U.S. has really led equity growth over the trailing time period. You can see U.S. large cap stocks and U.S. small cap stocks, both on a year-to-date basis, up about 15% for the large cap stocks and up about 12% year-to-date for small cap. Compare that to non-U.S. counterparts, developed emerging markets. They've been strong year-to-date, up 8.3% relative to U.S., not quite as strong. And then emerging markets, you can see that number down about 1.2% year-to-date. A lot of that has been driven by China, concerns in China over the third quarter, and kind of the oversight of the government there, how that's going to affect the companies listed on stock exchanges that are based in China. That led to a pretty sizable sell-off within emerging markets, and you'll see that when you look at the Morgan Stanley emerging market allocation that you all carry within the pension and a couple of the other active managers in the DC plans. Some of their underperformance being driven by an allocation to China. We have seen that back, though, since the end of the third quarter. And then within investment grade bonds, this is kind of your anchor to windward. This is when When things go wrong, we look to investment grade fixed income, so U.S. government issuances and very high quality corporate issuances to be a bit of a safe haven. On a year-to-date period, we do see a slight decrease in assets by 1.6%, and really that's being driven by those yields increasing that I mentioned. So as yields go up, the underlying holdings tend to depreciate, and vice versa. When we look at fixed income, when yields coming down, you see your fixed income holdings typically appreciate over that same time period. However, when yields are going up, that tends to mean that your liabilities that you have to cover with your pension assets are also going down. So on a asset liability basis, tends to be a bit healthier with yields slightly increasing on a go forward basis. And then finally, at the very bottom of the table here, core private real estate has seen a very strong rebound since the sell-offs that we've seen in the real estate market in 2020. You can see about a 12.5% return on a year-to-date basis. You will have an allocation there via UBS Trumbull Property Fund. That fund is being liquidated in full, if you all will recall. However, that's taken several quarters. And while that fund is being liquidated, you are still receiving pretty sizable returns actually over the past quarter from the investment there. And then lastly, on page 6, just a couple of items to note. What we're looking at on a go-forward basis, going from left to right, have we, as a global economy, reached peak growth? As I mentioned in the second quarter, about a 6.5% GDP annualized return for the U.S. That's come down a bit, particularly with supply chain constraints continuing to be a persistent problem around the globe on a go-forward basis. Economists, particularly lately, have lowered their expected growth rates on a go-forward basis, albeit from the 6.5% growth rate to maybe slightly lower in the 5% range, given that we are coming out of such a low economic environment in the depths of 2020. Inflation, how persistent will inflation be? Is this going to continue to be a persistently elevated number for a strong period of time, or is it going to be more transitory and inflation is going to come down in 2022? And then finally, monetary and fiscal policy. There is a lot of talk about how large infrastructure numbers are that could possibly be passed through Congress. Something that's important to note there is those numbers are over a 10-year period. So when taking a look at what the stimulus numbers were over COVID, they are less over that go-forward time period. So all in all, we tend to think that monetary and fiscal policy is coming down and being less supportive to markets on a go-forward basis. So let me pause there and see if there's any questions from you all. We think, if anybody thinks of a question, it's very important to remember that your long-term, when looking at the pension, the long-term asset allocation for the plan assets are very purposefully set via an asset liability study that we did a couple of years ago. We continue to maintain that allocation with long-term market return considerations in mind, and you all do a very good job of maintaining very close to your policy long-term allocations, the overall assets within the pension. You all distribute about just shy of $2 million in monthly benefits, so $1.8 million in monthly benefits coming from the pension. That's one of the tools we use to make sure that the assets for the pension continue to remain appropriately allocated with regard to liabilities going forward. Are there any questions just on the overall market before getting into some of the performance numbers?
Looks like there's no questions, Peter. You can continue.
Okay, maybe flipping ahead to page 9. What we're looking at here is the total pension plan performance through the third quarter. I also have an updated number for you in a minute or so with numbers through October and more updated numbers through November. But the total pension down about 0.7% over the quarter, year to date up 6%. And over the trailing 1-year time period, 16.3% overall. Longer term absolute numbers. These are all annualized numbers. So that 3-year number that you're looking at, 9.1%, that's an average 9.1% return for total pension plan assets over that 3-year period. That's a very strong number for the plan assets. Flipping ahead to page 10, how those strong returns resulted in assets. You can see this chart shows the growth of the overall plan since the turn of the century, and you can see that through the end of 9/30, assets are about $337 million. That's a slight decrease over the third quarter of about $6 million. However, over the trailing one-year period, that's a $41 million increase in overall assets for the pension. And then that bullet point at the bottom is an update on the assets under management for the plan as of the end of October. That's increased from $337 million to about $352 million. Page 11 is a look at the asset allocation versus policy targets as of 9/30. The takeaway here is that none of your assets are outside of their policy allocations. You can see real estate, the underweighting there, as I mentioned, UBS Trimble is continuing to be liquidated. And Mike and myself and our real estate team, we're in discussions with Tim and John on where best to reallocate those real estate assets as they continue to come due, as they continue to come back to you all to reinvest into the market on a go-forward basis. Page 12 is a look at the pension plan overall returns as of 9/30/2021. That top line number I already discussed, but over the quarter, your active managers were pretty mixed over the time period. You can see within, if you go down about midway on this chart, total small cap equity positive on a relative basis versus the underlying benchmark small cap equity down about 0.4%. However, when taking into consideration on how the benchmark did, so the investable small cap market, which was down about 4.5%, pretty strong on a relative basis. Within international equity, Morgan Stanley International, that was the laggard there, down about 5% over the quarter, really due to selection, particularly within energy and also underweight to energy, with oil prices increasing pretty significantly so far here in 2021. The sector has returned quite well, and underweight there has led to lag in returns for that international equity fund. On the following page, page 13, within your fixed income allocation, income research, and potential core plus, these are your more conservative, high quality, high grade fixed income managers. You can see both pretty much flat over the quarter and on a year-to-date basis in a very difficult environment with yields rising for fixed income managers. Both have performed well, down slightly. However, compared to the passive investable universe, both have outperformed over the trailing one-year period where we've seen yields come down pretty significantly, then come back up pretty significantly. Credit markets diverging with their government counterparts. The active management capabilities of both income research management and Prudential Core Plus have both been additive over that time period. And then Brandywine is a more return-seeking type fixed income allocation, down about 3.3% over the quarter. However, that more return-seeking oriented nature has been beneficial over time. Looking at the trailing one-year period number, up about 5.3% versus a negative 3% benchmark. And then finally, at the very bottom here, the total pension has returned an additional about 2.9% in the month of October. Bringing the year-to-date return to just shy of 9%. Then month-to-date through November 23rd, estimated returns were flat. However, we have seen sell-off the day after Thanksgiving. Some of that being clawed back, about half that being clawed back yesterday. So probably slightly negative now on a month-to-date basis through November. Are there any questions before turning to the DC plans?
Does not look like it.
Okay. Just very briefly on the DC plans, both the two plans offered here, the defined contribution plan. I'm looking at page 14, the packets. The defined contribution plan, the deferred compensation plan. But looking at these two plans, they both have identical lineups that they offer to participants on page 14. We're looking at the combined assets of both of the plans Overall, the table on the bottom right-hand corner, just shy of 125 million in combined DC assets. That's about an increase of about 25 million, just shy of 25 million over the trailing 1 year period. So those strong returns in capital markets, particularly equities, have certainly flowed through to the participants within the DC plans and their holdings there. Real briefly on performance, page 15, these are the Tier 1 assets. These are the Vanguard Institutional Target Retirement Income Fund, the set it and forget it type folks who just want to put their money into the retirement plan and not have to make any sort of active decisions on where to allocate their assets or how appropriate their asset allocation is. I say approach your retirement years, no concerns with the performance of each of the iterations of the target retirement funds. On page 16, the Tier 2 assets, these are the passive funds offered to your participants. Again, no concerns with their performance over the trailing time periods. Then within Tier 3, these are the active managers or the active funds offered to your plan participants. A bit mixed over the quarter. Vanguard U.S. Growth underperformed, and Vanguard International Growth underperformed as well. That International Growth Fund, as I mentioned before, allocation to China in particular detracted. However, all of the active managers that you see here in the Tier 3 assets, when looking at the longer term 3, 5, 10-year periods, have all performed quite well on both an absolute and a relative basis. We have no major concerns with their investment teams or their strategies going forward. And then finally, the last item I'll mention, pages 17 and 18 have investment management fee comparisons. On page 18 in particular, these are the DC plans investment management fees offered to participants. You can see at the very bottom, the bullet point there, beginning in February of 2022, the target retirement fund fees were going to be lowered from 0.09% to 0.08%. So certainly positive news and good for your participants invested in those strategies. So let me pause and see if there's any questions.
No questions, Peter.
Okay, well, that was it for our prepared materials. I will hand it back to you, Tim.
All right, thank you both very much. Trustees, I'm not going to point to anything in particular, but as you go through the rest of the presentation, you'll just see some peer comparisons on our assumptions. We're going to talk more about assumptions next month. So we're going to talk about some of the actuarial assumptions, and I'm going to send you some materials just to help you think about what we're going to present next week. Mainly, it's the assumed rate of return. We've been more conservative than our peers for the most part, and we're going to have some internal discussions. I've had some initial discussions with Ann and the actuary, so I think we're going to try to continue that trend. Stay conservative, help strengthen the plan. So we'll talk a little bit more about that next month. Just a heads up. Thank you, Peter and Mike. Appreciate your time, and I will talk to you soon.
All right, thank you. I'll have a good rest of the day.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, Tim, do you want to move to the portfolio update?
Yes, please. Portfolio update is the sheet that we look at every month, 4 grids up on the screen. You also have it in your packets. I'll start in the upper left. The portfolio value is down a little bit from last month. That's primarily because we had large interest payments. Our senior bonds, we have interest payments due in May and November. So we made a payment of many million in November. So that portfolio update is down, I think, less than 10 million overall. Yield to maturity for both the portfolio and benchmark are roughly the same as they were last month. So we haven't seen a lot of change there. We still are yielding more than the benchmark, but as market rates rise, they have been rising. They've been volatile, but so they have risen over the course of this year. The benchmarks come close to our portfolio because our portfolio turns over more slowly than the benchmark, which turns over entirely every month. Weighted average maturity, ours is a little bit longer than it was last month and where it's been recently, as we've taken some excess operating income and invested out a little bit longer to hit some future debt payments, just to match it up with some future expected payments on debt. Now, benchmark is relatively the same. Moving upward to the top right, sector allocation is roughly the same as it was last month, and more importantly, in line with all the policy limits. Fund summary, the only thing I think I'll point out there is on the debt project funds, you've got 45 million, so that's getting relatively low. Usually as we see that approach zero, it's kind of a signal that it's time to go back and get some debt. We're actually going to have some news next month about expected news on some new debt opportunities that we have, low-cost debt. So you'll be hearing about that more by next meeting. And then the maturity distribution in the lower right-hand corner is just a comparison of the maturity between ourselves and the benchmark. As you can see, the blue bar is us. We've got a lot more in that short period because we need operating income to operate, pay for projects and pay for operating costs. Nothing different there than what you usually see. Any questions? All right, I've got one more item. It's an update on the management audit. So a handful of months ago, we talked a little bit about the management audit. It's a requirement from the charter. So on the next page of this presentation, you see the way it's worded in the charter. Independent audit of the management shall be made every 5 years by a nationally recognized management firm. So we did an RFP to look for a firm to do the management audit. As you can see, the firm that we select can't have a financial interest, direct or indirect, in the fiscal affairs of the district or any material financial relationship with anybody related to the district. We take that to mean that we can't use our current external auditor or internal auditor or somebody that we are regularly in a financial relationship with. So we do an RFP to look for a new firm. The purpose of the audit, I'm not going to go too deep into this because we talked about it a few months ago. If you recall, I sent you the RFP to review before it went out. But what we asked for the firms to provide a bid based on doing a review of our internal control framework, looking at specific in our control environment, specifically our control environment, to do a risk assessment, look at our information communications monitoring activities, basically to look at all of our policies and processes in general from an enterprise view, not at, like when you see internal audit come in, they'll look at purchasing, or look at receivables or payables or specific IT function. Those are control activities. We're looking for more the overall enterprise risk side, make sure that our controls are overall designed to provide reasonable insurance that we don't have gaps or weaknesses that would keep us, that would allow us to take on too much risk or keep us from seeing or allowing fraud, for example, or making mistakes that wouldn't be reported to the board or to management, that sort of thing. So it's basically the foundation for fraud awareness, for risk control, that sort of thing. So that's what we were looking for. The next page talks a little bit about the goal. Again, provide assurance to ratepayers, rate commission, and trustees that we have appropriate controls in place to manage the district's resources. So on the next page is the grading criteria we used. So we looked at the firms that bid. We looked at their experience and reliability, responsiveness of their plan, that demonstrated how they were going to conduct this audit. Cost was a factor, of course, and then also their references, who they've done work with, what kind of work that they've done. The RFP got sent out to 55 firms. At last check, there were only 17 that had reviewed it. We only received 2 proposals. This is an ongoing issue sometimes with audit services for government entities. Not a lot of firms step up to do it. With reasons we've gotten in the past, resource constraints, government work is not a primary focus of their business, low price point for government contracts. So we're seeing less and less response for this kind of work. The quotes that we got, there were only 2. So I say a range, but these were the 2 points, roughly $65,000 and another one for $150,000. That is not unusual. I think the last time we did this, we received 4 responses, and they range from a low end of roughly the 65 to over 250,000. I know we've seen bids for 400,000 and this kind of thing, but that would be well outside our budget. The committee that reviewed these were Tracy Coleman, Director of HR, Todd Loretta, our Internal Audit Coordinator, and myself. And then the recommendation that's going to be brought before you next week is that we select UHY Advisors. They are a large national firm. The parent company is actually a UK firm, but UHY Advisors is headquartered in Michigan. They've been around a long time, over 50 years. They're a global accounting and consulting firm with a national government audit practice. They do have offices in Missouri, although the office that will be coordinating this audit is based in Mid-Atlantic, actually Maryland. I guess they do not have the personnel locally that would handle this particular kind of audit. But they do have a Missouri presence. The other firm, Shoemaker, has bid on this before as well. They're also based out of Michigan, much smaller firm. Also looked capable, so they had a qualified bid. We ended up selecting UHY Advisors because of their size, experience, also the lower cost point worked in their favor as well. The work plan summary on the next page, just a little bit what to expect. So they will reach out to you as trustees. Usually the way these go is there'll be interviews, sometimes there's surveys, they'll walk through current processes, just to understand the way things work here. They'll do some testing and analysis, there'll be continued communication back and forth, and ultimately they're going to deliver a report to you that gives their assessment of the control features that we talked a little bit about. So, and there'll be a detailed report, it'll have recommendations, it'll have audit findings, and the expectation is that it'll have actionable items. That's what we've seen in the past, and this has been a useful exercise. Excuse me. So the next page is just the detail sheet that'll be in the agenda. We had, again, 2 bids. The budget we had was up to $200,000. The firm we selected is under budget. We expect about $65,000. So it put us under budget for this particular project. Any questions about this?
When's it supposed to, when are they supposed to finish the report?
So once this contract is approved, we'll start talking about the time frame, but we would expect them to finish it by the end of the fiscal year, which is in June. So they'll start probably early in the calendar year and then finish it within a few months.
Thank you.
If there are no questions, we have one more item on the agenda, and I believe I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thank you, Tim. You should have a detail sheet for agenda item for proposed ordinance 15843 in your packet. It's ordinance 15843 is for an introduction and adoption to authorize a professional services contract with Rimini Street. This is for support services for our legacy Oracle Enterprise Business System, or EBS system. And it's for 1 year with an additional renewal of 1 year at a cost of $190K. As we're getting ready, I think I've spoke a month ago or so that we're getting ready to move from our legacy Oracle system on-prem to a cloud version over the next 18 months. But in the meantime, we still have to support our legacy system. So this is for support services. It'll still provide things like patches, tax updates, any break fixes to any kind of issues we have for the next 2 years as we move from the on-prem system to the cloud. We had 2 bids on this, and Rimini Street was the successful bidder. So, is there any questions on that? Not, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. The next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, January 4th. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, the meeting is concluded.
We will switch the documents out as quick as we can, Trustee Wilson.
Morning. Welcome to the Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting, November. Can I get a roll call, please?
We'll note that all trustees are present.
Okay, there are no comments by the chair. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the prior minutes, November the 2nd minutes? Okay, if no objections, the minutes are approved. So right into the new business. Ms. Meyer, would you? How are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning. Proposed resolution number 3715, the detail sheet is in your packet. It's a resolution authorizing the district to enter into the second one-year renewal term with Kaina Iman. She provides our state legislative lobbying services. The original contract was a one-year contract with 4 one-year options. And like I said, this resolution will authorize the second option year of those 4. Kaina has been with us for a few years. She continues to do a great job. She works well with both sides of the legislatures, helps us carry forward our legislative priorities, and she coordinates visits. We've done them virtual last year. We're planning to do virtual again this year. And she's also been very instrumental in helping us to try to push forward stormwater bonds. We haven't been successful with that yet, but we keep trying. And also with the CARES funding and the ARPA funding that's coming up. She's working very closely with Marion and the rest of the staff here at MSD to try to get some of that funding. So this resolution will, like I said, authorize the second option year renewal term. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Meyer. We can move on to Ms. Coleman. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Trustees, if I can bring your attention to Resolution 3716. This is for medical services for the district staff. This resolution is for BJC to have another, the first option year renewed. These medical services provide for our pre-employment drug testing. It also does the initial assessments for our work comp as well. This resolution year will be from January 1st of 2022 to December 31st of 2022. The contract will not exceed $500,000 for this particular resolution. Are there any questions, trustees, about the resolution for BJC? All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Good morning. How are you today, Ms. Meredith?
Good, thank you. I have a resolution for Workforce Development Grant Program, resolution number 3717. This resolution is a renewal contract with the Missouri Works Initiative for our Building Union Diversity Program, better known as BUD. It originated as a result of our workforce development initiatives under our community benefits agreement that we currently have that we executed back in December of 2013. We successfully had participation in the BUD program every year that we've had the contract, and we went out for an RFP in 2018. Awarded the original contract in 2019, and this is actually the second renewal year. The first year funding was extended into the program due to the pandemic. So actually the first year's funding stretched over 2 years, and so we're coming for the second renewal of the contract. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay. There are no other items. Is there any new business or anything that anyone wants to say before we end this meeting? Any words of wisdom for the committee? Okay, I thank you, and I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.